Alright, welcome back, you beautiful souls, to a new series. This is my 3K special. Thank you guys so much for 3K subs. I have been planning out this quirk for a while now, and a few other YouTubers have done What If Deku Had Wish, which is sorta kind of how this quirk would work, but it's different. And as the series goes on, I'll explain more and more about what the quirk can do. But simply put, what the limits of the quirk are based on the knowledge that Izuku Midoriya has. He can't alter a quirk that is like an S tier quirk, like All for One, or One for All, or Overhaul, or Decay. You know, like quirks that are like really far up there. Deku will not be able to edit these quirks. Deku cannot edit the quirk, any quirk that he holds. He will, once, if he edits a quirk to a certain power, to be a certain way, he can't alter it until he's gained more knowledge, or he won't be able to alter it if he accidentally makes it an S tier. I just wanted to say that up front, because how his quirk activates, I can already tell a lot of you will be down in the comment section and say, oh no, that's stupid. But with that being said, let's get into our story. Our story actually begins years before Deku was born. And this actually starts a few months before the creation of One for All. All for One's brother is pissed off, and being a man, he needed to blow off some steam. So he ends up going out and having a one-night stand to kind of blow off some steam, because he can't stop what his brother's doing, and he's just pissed off about it. So he ends up having a one-night stand. Well, this leads to the creation of Deku's quirk, and with each generation that it's passed down via like prodigies, because it can't be passed on like say One for All is, where the person can pass it on to someone else. How it's passed down is through genetics, either via sperm or egg cells, either one. But over the years, the quirk constantly mutates until it will get to Deku. Now, this part in the comment section, who's the descendant of All for One's brother? Either Inko or Hisashi. And this will play a small role in later parts, and can potentially have some far-reaching outcomes with how I've already have the story written up. But I do have it set to where either parent can be thing, and depending on which one you decide, will change a couple of things. But it won't change these first two episodes. So in the comment section, comment which one, Inko or Hisashi, for that. So that being said, also this quirk can't awaken if someone already has a quirk. Basically, only someone who is quirkless, or someone who hasn't awakened their own quirk. Like, say if someone's a late bloomer and they don't actually awaken, like their quirk doesn't come in until they're in their 20s, but at a younger age this quirk could awaken before that. Basically, once you have a quirk, this quirk won't come in. And no, I am not giving Deku One for All in this at all. No, that is not happening. because if he got a hold of One For All after this quirk awakened, it would boost the quirk, and it would make Deku beyond broken with how I'm taking this Izuku Midoriya. So all that being said, all the backstory explanation of the series and everything, let's get into this. And if you guys don't like how I started the series out, I can retcon it in a 0.5, but I just want to get this part 0 out first. So our story starts at episode 1 of the anime. Our story doesn't really start and doesn't really change much until Deku is found to be quirkless. But unbeknownst to everyone, including Izuku's parents, because All For One and also his brother did not know that his brother ended up having a child. And it's just like bastard child grows up not knowing who his father is in a war-torn zone and everything, and ends up having a family and yada yada yada. Eventually we get to Deku. So Izuku is really distraught like this in canon, and he's crying, like he's really, really, really upset. He's under a lot of emotional stress at this point in the story. So when Izuku asks his mom, can I hear him? Like, here, pointing at the video of All Might that he usually watches. And what Inko says next changes our young Deku's life forever. Like, it will forever be changed with this. Inko, through tears, says, "Baby, I'm so sorry. My quirk was not so weak. I wish you would have. I wish my quirk was stronger. Out of the chair. His eyes begin to glow green, like bright green. Like that emerald green that his eyes have shown to have sometimes. With the center of it being white. Like in this photo that you see, like the white portions of his eyes are glowing like an emerald green, and like the irises are like white. And they're glowing too, like a bright white light. Also, his hair like spikes up and it begins to glow with that with a faded version of the emerald color. All of a sudden, Inko grabs her head in pain, like ah, ah, and she's screaming in pain. Then things in the room begin to float. Inko, being scared at this and the headache like subsiding a little bit, grabs her son right afterwards and puts him in a cradle position, basically kind of like holding him close to her chest where like her heart is. Because mind you, Izuku's a 5-year-old, so he's about what, 2-3 feet tall. He's not really that big, so he's about almost, he's like 2.5-3 feet tall. So she's holding him like kind of bridal style, cradling him. As their house then implodes. And what I mean by implode, like basically everything, like the house, the room, all the utensils, everything in the house and part of the ground just shoots into where Inko is. And before she passed out, she's like, she thinks, no, not my baby. And everything just explodes outwards, creating this massive crater in the ground. bigger than what had already been created with the implosion of everything. And then Inko passes out, still holding on to Izuku. Heroes and ambulances and firefighters end up coming. They make sure everyone in the surrounding area is fine. They then see the woman and a woman and a child in this massive crater, and they end up getting Inko and Izuku up and onto stretchers. Like, both of them have passed out from the experience in the massive amount of stamina that they both had used. Basically, what had happened in this moment, Izuku being the winner of the genetic lottery, like a lot of what ifs do, the quirk edit had awakened. And the moment his mom asked, kind of made a wish a little bit, and Izuku's quirk kind of went haywire, and in that moment he's thinking of All Might. So Izuku pretty much took, like, if we would say Inko's quirk is a 2, her quirk ranked up to a 10. She doesn't have an OP quirk, but it is massively stronger than what it would be in canon. And I mean massively. Basically, how in canon she can only pull small objects, now she actually has legitimate telekinesis. To a good degree, but not to, like, say something like Tatsume from One Punch Man. It would be a slightly weaker version of her sister's telekinetic abilities. But in this, she still has to use her hands to actually use her quirk. Though minor things, like minor weighted things, like she can have things kind of floating around her. And actually, yeah. If some of you have seen the YouTuber who did What If Bakugo Was Quirkless, how Izuku's quirk was in that, that's basically how her quirk is, minus the whole fire stuff. So it's really strong. So after a couple of days, Inko wakes up, and Izuku is still out, and she's looking around the room, and she's like, my baby, where's my baby? As things begin to, like, float in the room. And the nurse, like, Miss Midoriya, calm down. He's in the next room over. He's fine. He's just sleeping right now. And the things kind of crash to the ground, and the officers in a particular, and the doctor comes in. And the officer is like, oh, Miss Midoriya, you're finally awake. We had a few questions about what happened. And then the doctor says, yes, ma'am, what happened? It seemed like somebody's quirk went out of whack, and we were wondering if it was the young boys. Inko then begins to, like, tear up, and she's crying a little bit. She's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It just happened. And the officer then, like the nurse, like, calm down, Miss Midoriya, because things had begun to start floating again. And she's like, I'm sorry. And the officer reiterates his question, what happened, ma'am? And then Inko explains that, well, the day that it happened, like she said a few days ago when, like, we were brought in, because, like, they explained to her that it had been 2 days since, like, she had passed out. And Izuku has woken up, but he's been in and out. He's really exhausted in, like, he's extremely fatigued, so have him under constant supervision, but he's completely stable now. So she explains that her son was deemed quirkless because of the joint, and he hadn't manifested yet. And well, when he was watching a video of All Might, and then all of a sudden his eyes began to glow with an emerald glow, and then his irises started to glow white, and then his hair started to glow a lighter color of like emerald, and then all of a sudden I had this as things began to like float in the room again. All of a sudden it immediately starts crashing down as another person has walked in. And many of you can figure out who this is. It would be pretty obvious. The only hero that has a quirk that can cancel other quirks. It's Eraserhead. Calm down, ma'am. Explain it again. Well, what happened with my son, and then I had a massive headache, and then all of a sudden my quirk was a lot stronger, and it went out of whack. The nurse, the doctor, and the police officer, and also, as I was a little shocked about this, because they've never really heard about someone's quirk all of a sudden getting stronger, and then Aizawa begins to think, was she taking some kind of drug? And then he immediately says, have you been taking anything illegal? God. Okay, I believe I was where Ingo was explaining what had happened. I'm sorry about the interruption, but I'm kind of at work and I was trying to get this recorded since it's been completely dead. So she basically explains what had happened with Izuku, and everyone is shocked. They accuse her of like taking quirk enhancement drugs, and this is when the doctor pipes up. Like, her blood test came back negative. Though she did have an increase of adrenaline running through her body. So they make sure that Inko is okay. After the next following week, Izuku has come up, and they try to get him to await to activate his quirk again, and no matter what they do, no matter what they try, even trying to replicate what had happened with his mom, nothing seems to happen. And they begin to think that maybe the woman was in distress, and then her quirk evolved. Because it's not completely unheard of, but it's so rare that it almost never happens to where someone's quirk just all of a sudden gets stronger out of the blue. There's still... So, like I was saying before I got interrupted yet again. So, Ingo is... Like, they have been doing testing, and Inko has gotten used to activating and deactivating her quirk, and it has gotten considerably stronger. Whereas her limit was like 5 pounds, now her limit is pretty much her body weight. Because in the moment when Izuku edited her quirk, he was thinking about All Might, and his quirk kind of took over and made his mom seem like really strong, at least into a 5-year-old's eyes. So through testing, they aren't able to get Izuku to activate his quirk again, though things will happen, but they still think that maybe it was just a second awakening of a second awakening of Inko Midoriya's quirk. So the next week, when Izuku finally gets back to like school, kids are asking what happened, because especially Katsuki, like he's like, Izuku, what happened? Like your house I saw in the news your house was destroyed. Did a villain attack? And Izuku's like, no, Kachan, mom's quirk went out of whack. And this just makes, like, Katsuki's eyes just get wide, like, what? Auntie Inko's quirk did that? Kind of thing, because he knows what her quirk is, and he's like, and he's still, like, because this is only about 6 months after Katsuki's quirk has come in, so Izuku and Katsuki are still kind of friends, like, at this point. They haven't really had, like, a strife. And later on that day after school, he's, like, Katsuki and him are talking on, like, their way home, because they do still live relatively close, because they were able to find an apartment close by. So close by to where they used to live, so that there's at least something. And on the way to, like, their house, they do pass by where Izuku's old home used to be, and Izuku sees it, and Katsuki is like, man, I hope one day my quirk gets that, I hope one day I can make my quirk that strong. Izuku's eyes begin to glow, but then Katsuki turns to him and freaks out. She's like, Izuku, what the hell? And Izuku, like, shakes his head, and he's like, what? And Katsuki's like, dude, your eyes were just glowing. And as he's like, Mom said my eyes were glowing before what happened. And so the boys run to Izuku's house, and Katsuki's like, Auntie Inko, Izuku, his quirk, did it actually come in? His eyes were just glowing a little bit. And her eyes get a little bit wider, and no, Izuku didn't edit Katsuki's quirk. It almost happened, because first Izuku has to hear it. Then his quirk actually has to, like, activate completely. Basically, if his ear doesn't, like, actually stand up, it's not actually working properly. It's just easy. Basically, the first stage is his eyes glowing emerald, and they're reading the quirk that is present in the person that he's gazing at. Then his eyes and his hair stands up and begin to glow. His hair stands up, and then the center, his irises begin to glow white when the quirk is actually altering the quirk. And then Izuku's like, he's like, yeah, Mom, like, for some reason, this information about Kachan's quirk is in my head. I don't know what's wrong. And then Izuku, like, then passes out. And Katsuki is, like, freaking out. Inko calls over Mitsuki, saying that Izuku has fainted and she's going to be taking him to the hospital, because Katsuki was supposed to go over to the Midoriya's house because Mitsuki had a prior engagement with work, and her husband was at work too, and they didn't want Katsuki at home alone. So, and I believe in canon, like, Mitsuki and Inko were actually friends. Were at least associated. But Katsuki and Izuku were, like, actually really good friends before Izuku was quirkless and Katsuki started to bully. Now, mind you, Izuku will get bullied a little bit because for other reasons. So they take Izuku to the doctor and they begin to ask him like what happened, and they ask Katsuki what he said, and he said what he said, and then they ask him what he was actually feeling at the time, and they do, and then they test it out. They like one of the nurses has a weak quirk, and she says she basically goes into the whole spiel, and Ezekiel's quirk that Izuku does have a quirk, but it may have two parts to it. There's something happened with Inko that didn't happen with the boy or the nurse. And well, Izuku has been like initially gets deemed with a reading quirk. Like, he can read other people's quirk if, like, they say a certain phrase or if Izuku really tries. And after a couple of weeks, Izuku is finally able to, like, grasp, like, him actually activating the quirk at will, at least the reading portion. And they have theories that Izuku may be able to alter someone else's quirk based on what Inko had told them in the records that they have about her quirk. So, years pass, Izuku does get bullied, but in this, Katsuki is more aloof. He does pick on Izuku, but it's not to the degree that he does in canon, because Izuku does have a quirk. And one thing that has, like, actually impresses Katsuki, Izuku one day says, "Kachan, your sweat, like, your quirk uses your sweat, right?" And Katsuki's like, "Damn nerd, how you know that?" As he's looking at Izuku and his eyes are glowing green, and he's like, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. Hey, Izuku, how does their quirk work?" Pointing at, like, a random kid in class, and Izuku, like, says it. And then Katsuki goes up and confronts the kid. The kid's a little scared because Katsuki's creating little explosions, just kind of being the jerk that he is. And the kid goes to, like, activate his quirk. He's like, your quirk looks like this, doesn't it? With a grin on his face. And the kid's like, how do you know that? And he looks over at Izuku, and Izuku's eyes are glowing green. And the boy begins to laugh, and so does Katsuki. So when Izuku gets home this afternoon, and I would say he's about 6.5 years old at this point. He tells his mom that he figured out a better, like, he was able to, like, actually read and digest, like, what someone's quirk and how it's used. And then he looks at his mom and activates his quirk. At least the way that he's learned how to do at least the reading portion of the quirk. And he, like, his jaw just drops, and Inko's just looking at him. It's like, "Baby, what is it?" And he then says, "Mom, your quirk, it's really strong." And Mizuku then explains what he sees, and she's like, "Huh." And because past year and a half, she hasn't really tested out the limits of her quirk. She just knows it's gotten really strong, and she has been able to do things that she never was. Like, instead of being able to pull stuff, she can also push stuff away. But she can also make things like levitate around her. So I would say when Izuku was doing this, like, she was actually cooking and actually using her quirk to cut some vegetables while she was boiling water, while she was prepping something else. Like, in basically using her quirk like she normally would into day-to-day things, because Inko, she's a mom. She's a homemaker. Like, that's her thing. And in this story, I just, like, in past what ifs, I have changed Inko's personality greatly. But in this, I think I want to keep the characters as close to their canon with the obvious changes of why it would. And I can't see Inko being any different than what she was in canon. Like, obviously, she's not going to get fat because just because, like, just plot. She's not going to get fat. Because, from my understanding, the reason why she got overweight was because of depression, because of Izuku and everything. And in this, Izuku's happy. Yeah, he gets picked on for having such kind of a useless quirk, but he has a quirk. It's kind of like the kid with the eyeballs that can stretch out of his head. That's kind of a useless quirk, and yeah, he could probably look around corners and stuff with it, but it doesn't really serve anything. So it's just like, oh, it begins to make her think. So she will, over the years, like, begin to, like, test out the limits, but she's still going to be a homemaker. So, about 6 months later, Izuku and Katsuki are on their way home, and Katsuki's ragging on Izuku because Katsuki's quirk is getting stronger, but it isn't because of Izuku. And he says, "Don't you wish you had such an amazing quirk like mine, Izuku?" And Izuku's like, "Yeah, Kachan, my quirk's kind of useless, but it does have its advantages, you know." And he kind of punches Katsuki in the shoulder, and Katsuki's like, "Yeah, without your help, I probably wouldn't have been able to get, like really refine my quirk the way I have been able to." And they proceed to keep walking, and Izuku is like Bakugo still bullies Izuku, but it's not. It's kind of like you and your friends. You're constantly making jokes about them. Like, Izuku may one time say he may, like, there is a little strife. They're not really friends, but they're not enemies. They're kind of in between. Like, sometimes they'll be at each other's throats because Katsuki's saying, like, "You have such a weak quirk." And then Izuku rebuttals, like, "Yeah, well, you're such a hothead. No wonder your quirk is explosions," kind of thing. And they do go back and forth. And it's just their thing. So, on their way home, Izuku is going to be going over to Mitsuki's residence today because Inko had a doctor's appointment. Like, she's getting her quirk assessed to, like, the extent of it, and to really do, like, some rigorous testing with it. Because there have been a couple of incidents where she's gotten migraines before. And mind you, Izuku didn't do a perfect edit with her quirk. It was more so she would grow into the full extent of the power. So occasionally she does get migraines, and it's a sign that things are happening with her quirk. So she does regularly go get tested, and her quirk had started to get a little bit stronger. So Inko was away for the day for a whole day. So she asked Mitsuki to cook dinner for Izuku, and she would just pick something up on the way home. So on their way to the Bakugo residence, like, Izuku and Katsuki are ragging on each other, and then a villain attack happens. And when something happens, the villain then goes to, like, attack the boys because they kind of got in his way. And before he can use his quirk, and I'm gonna say this villain's quirk is a transform is like a it's like an emitter slash transformation quirk, kind of like Tokuyami's, but it's not like Dark Shadow. It's more like a like these metal spikes that just like grow out of the guy's hands. And Izuku immediately like opened his eyes, and they started to glow emerald. And and then his hair starts glowing like a light emerald color, and the white of his eyes like then start to like glow a different color. Like they start glowing a red. They start having a reddish hue, and then his hair flashes like a red hue, and all of a sudden, like the guy's like claws like retract, and he's just standing there like, "What did you do, kid? What did you do? What did you do to me?" Because only like the tips of his fingers were like were synced, and they weren't like really protruded. At this, heroes come and tackle the guy, and Izuku like is like kind of brushed back by one of the pros along with Bakugo, and Bakugo the whole time is just looking at Izuku like shocked. He's like, "What the hell? Izuku can do that with his quirk? What the?" And then the pros begin to ask, like, when the villain is being hauled away, he's like, "That kid, he did something to me. Those eyes, the eyes of that kid, they were glowing. He did it. He did this to me." And so afterwards, the pros like ask him, and then they notice they run his name, and then they call Inko. Inko's freaking out, and she says she's at like she's at a hospital on the other side of town, but to give the officer that she was talking to, she gave a number to Mitsuki and told him to call like Mitsuki. She will be able to like go and deal with anything, and she gives like permission for Mitsuki to like handle and take Izuku, because she can't really get out of what she is right now, and it'll be several hours before she can get over to the hospital that they're going to be taking Izuku to. So on the ride there, like Katsuki's asking Izuku, what the hell did you do to that guy? Your hair had changed color. And Izuki's like, "I don't know. I just saw how his quirk worked, and well, I just felt like if he couldn't use his quirky the way he should, then like he wouldn't be able to hurt us." It's like, and the whole time he's apologizing to like the officer that's riding in the ambulance with him. He's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use my quirk." And the officer says, "You're fine. You're fine. Your quirk went a little out of whack, but you're totally fine right now. Like, it's fine, young man. We're just going to take you to the hospital to get you checked out to make sure nothing's going on. We also need to get your friend checked out because of what happened to that villain." And Mizuku's a little worried about this, and after he gets to the hospital, after Mitsuki gets there, Mitsuki arrives shortly after, and after citing some paperwork for Izuku and them doing some blood tests and them talking to him about it, a familiar face like is walking by, and she sees Izuku, and she's like, "Is that you, Midoriya? Is that you, young Midoriya? What happened to you this time?" And Izuku looks up, and he's like, "Oh, you're the hydrokinesis nurse from when I was a kid. And she's like, did your quirk go out of whack again? And Izuku kind of chuckles a little bit. Yeah, I think, but it's different. So the nurse goes about her way, and she looks at the chart. She grabs the boy's chart because she is making her rounds. She's like the head nurse. She has to get medications ready, and her eyes kind of widen. And at this point, Mitsuki has been told that she can go in. And also, Bakugo is there too, so they both make their way into Izuku's room. And Mitsuki immediately grabs Izuku and says, "Are you okay, Izuku?" And, well, Izuku, he says, "Yeah, but I think my quirk is actually an edit quirk." Sorry about that. But I think I can alter people's quirks, and they're scared about this. And about an hour passes, and Inko arrives, and she comes running in, and she's like, "Baby, are you okay?" And Izuku's like, "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine. They said the doctors..." And this is when Mitsuki pops up. She's like, "Yeah, the staff said that they have to call in some help with a hero. Because of they don't want his cart going completely out of whack during the testing." And Izuku's like, "Yeah, it's probably that hero that you talked about, Mom. Eraser Head?" And he goes a little bit white, and then a few minutes pass, and about 30 minutes pass, and Eraserhead does arrive. Because he does operate in that city, or at least the town over, and he's called in for cases like this to where people can't really control their quirks, and dangerous quirks at that. Because at the moment, they really don't know what the Deku's quirk is actually. So through testing, the same nurse volunteers because she doesn't really use her quirk, and it's not really something that she doesn't really care if she has a quirk or not. Like her goal, like her thing in life is actually being a medical professional. Like, yeah, sometimes it can help with like she can splash water on her face without actually like touching. She can rinse her hands off and stuff like that. She can help like with blood, like cleaning up blood. But it's not something if she loses because there's a chance of that with what had happened with the villain, it really wouldn't affect her. So after some testing, they find out that Izuku can indeed alter someone's quirk or edit their quirk. So his quirk is actually deemed edit. And so the next day at school, the kids and everything start bullying Izuku. And then Izuku's eyes begin to glow, and then like his irises start to glow red. And they're freaked out by this, and then Katsuki pipes up. He's like, "Yeah, you better watch out. Izuku's quirk's no longer useless. It's probably one of the best quirks. It's probably almost as good as mine." And they ask, he's like, what? Your quirk evolved? Like, what happened? Like, what's your quirk then? It's different than what you thought it was? And kids, like, after they find out, they begin to, like, hound him to, like, improve their quirks and stuff. And Izuku gets flustered by this. And he finally says, "Why don't you guys just leave me the f*** alone?" And Katsuki's sitting there, like, he has thought about asking Izuku to improve his quirk, to, like, boost his quirk. But he's like, I want to prove that I can be the greatest hero with my own power, kind of thing is happening. So, about a year after this, Izuku is about 8 years old, and he has gotten a better grasp on his quirk because they do have volunteers of, well, with Izuku reducing like someone's quirk, they do have volunteers of people that that their quirks are a burden on their life. Like, say they have certain mutations. And Izuku slowly does rumors like start to flow around, but after some talks with some government officials, things have he's been told to, like, his identity is kept secret in this, and the people have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So Izuku has been able to help a few people out with their quirks that necessarily have a dangerous quirk to themselves, but aren't that strong. And they have called in some pros that have been willing test subjects, and some of them that he can't alter because, like, the quirk is just too strong. So they find out, like, what his limitations are, and Inko asks him, like, one day to, like, alter her quirk, and Izuku's like, Mom, I can't, I just can't, for some reason your quirk's too strong now. But I can do this. I can't loosen the power, but his hair glows like a emerald, like a light emerald, like reddish hue. And he fixes his mom, like, she no longer will, like, get migraines, and she'll have better control over the quirk. Like, Izuku can't really do much more than that. And over the years, he will get better and better with it. So one day we're walking by, and Izuku and Katsuki are on their way home, and they see a girl getting attacked, and they look at each other, and then Katsuki rolls his eyes, and he's like, "You know our moms are gonna ground us for this, right, you damn nerd?" And the two jump in, Katsuki creating explosions to kind of separate the guys from the girl, and Izuku, like, grabs her and pulls her away, and she's just looking at the two. And Izuku then steps up in between the two and the guys go to use his quirk, and Izuku's eyes begin to glow, and he's like, nope, 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 your quirk doesn't work anymore. As Katsuki comes in with an explosion right next to the guy's side, knocking him back and toppling him over in pain. And the girl is just standing there in shock, and she's like, well, thank you, I guess, but you guys used your quirk in public. And Izuku's like, yeah, well... And the pro ends up showing up, and it's a nameless pro, and he's like, you two, what did you do? And this situation is explained, and he's like, well, you didn't really hurt him, but young boy, your quirk, it's a very strange one. What's your name? And he tells him the name, and then you hear his eyes go wide, and he's like, you're the... Before he can say any other words, he shuts his mouth, and it's like, very well, you'll be getting a call later today, young Midoriya. It wasn't okay for you to use your quirk like that in public, but you did hold back. Is it possible for you to return the guy's quirk? Because he would technically, if he, and this is when he leans down and he whispers, if you return his quirk, we can just blame it. We can just say that he's bullshitting and everything. This hero, Miyazuki looks up at him and he's like, sure. And Miyazuki looks at the guy and changes his quirk back. And Miyazuki's like, I'm sorry. And Katsuki's standing there too. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I held back. And then after the pro leaves with the villain, with the criminal, they turn around to see like the look of shock on this girl's face. And one moment, I've actually got to look up this name real. Sorry about that. I actually didn't write this person's name down. So he run like they talk with the girl and they introduce themselves, and Izuku's like, my name's Midoriya Izuku, and well, this hothead right here, his name's Bakugo. And then Katsuki's like, damn nerd, my name's Bakugo Katsuki. And I'm gonna be a better hero than you will ever be. As he like proceeds to punch him in the arm, kind of shocking the girl that's standing in front of him. And then they turns like, so what's your name? So Katsuki's like, so what's your name? Slenderface. And Miyazuki's like, Kachan, come on, that wasn't nice. We've talked about this. A hero doesn't act like that. And Miyazuki's like, I apologize for my hot-headed friend's, like, abrasiveness. What's your name? And she's like, Togage Setsuna. And it's nice to meet you. And, well, he is kind of rude, but you two seem like you're friends. And this is when Izuku and Katsuki, like, both say, we're not really friends, but we're not enemies. We've just known each other pretty much our whole lives. If anything, we're more like family, if anything, that fights. As Katsuki kind of creates an explosion, and Izuku turns to, like, Katsuki with his eyes glowing, and Katsuki's like, fine, I don't want a repeat of last time. Anything, and then Izuku's like, well, are you going to be fine getting home? Do you need help getting to the train station or something? And the girl says, yeah, I'm fine, but could I get your number? I would like to keep in touch. I mean, you two are kind of my hero, right? And so they exchange information and everything, and over the next couple of months, they do end up meeting up again, and they find out she goes to a different school than them, and she did really think about being a hero. And I know I'm changing this character, but they have talked about, like, their quirks. And Miyazuki says, well, I can't really say what my quirk does because of reasons. And, well, the explosion head over here. Damn nerd. That's my quirk, not what I am. Kind of thing happens. So, with that, you beautiful souls, I'm going to end this part here. Part 2 to the awakening will be out sometime later. I'm doing this a 2-part, part 0. This has been what if Deku had edit. And I know a few other YouTubers have done this quirk, but like I said, I have asked about this months ago. and I have talked to a few people in PMs about like what a quirk like this would be. So if you know who they are, link their you can link. I give all permission to link their channel in below. But also, don't forget to comment down below that who you want to be the descendant, because it does change some things, but not too much. But there are just certain comical aspects that will happen later. So that being said, like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. This video you won't need to do. There's no like goal. But I do need you to comment down below either Hasashi or Inko. And that being said, see you in the next video!